Got some people jumping in now. This is my first day off after a 4-day in a row shift. Hello there, Vicky Hill. Did 4 days in a row. This is my day off. I have to do some training tomorrow, so this is going to be a very unproductive day. I have training tomorrow, then I have a day off. Then I am going to fly in the helicopter. It's not my regularly scheduled shift, but I'm doing it in order to keep my exposure up to critical calls to maintain my competency and stuff. So I work for a children's hospital, and we do critical care transport, neonatal and pediatric critical care transport. We have ambulances and we have a helicopter, and Saturday I'll be on the helicopter. I'm a critical care paramedic. So we go out to outlying hospitals where there's really sick kids, where those hospitals and those urgent cares and those doctors' offices don't have particular expertise in taking care of kids. And we bring them back to a children's hospital so that they can get the appropriate pediatric care. It is amazing and intense. It's amazing because you get to take care of kids, and it's intense because you get to take care of kids. Sick kids is intense. But there's something immensely gratifying about taking care of sick kids. They're not like sick adults. There's adults that really like being taken care of, and they will go to the doctor's office frequently, and they'll go to the hospital frequently because that's where they get attention. And I'm not trying to gaslight anyone who has chronic diseases, but it's true. And they can give you adults can give you a hard time. They're fully developed people, and they've developed, some of them have developed bad habits and bad ways of interacting with people. Kids don't want to be sick. They don't want to be on an ambulance. They don't want to be in the hospital. And they're so genuine, and they have no guile within them whatsoever. And they just want to be better. And there's something very gratifying about that. I can't remember in the last year where I've had a kid that gave us a hard time. It just doesn't happen. And when I say it doesn't happen, because we do critical care, we don't pick up kids with behavioral problems. That's a whole other thing. So we don't see that. Hello, Brick EMS. Good to see you. Bro, you got to read Red, White, and 1776. The book goes hard. Also says EMS should be paid a lot more. Let me look that up. Red, White, and 1776. I'm skeptical. Hello, ED medical coder here. So like the codes for the diagnosis and all that sort of stuff. What do you think of AEMT giving pulseless epi in code situations as a national skill? I think they should be able to. Hello from Germany. Hello back to you from Germany. It's always cool when you get someone from other countries. What do you think about atropine and higher AV block? What do you think about peanut butter and higher AV block? Because they both have the same efficacy in high AV blocks. I'm an advanced and have had to work so many codes without paramedics. you should be able to work a code competently without a paramedic. In fact, survival rates are higher with BLS run calls than they are ALS run calls. And that's usually because BLS can only do the things that we know actually contribute to survival, which is quality compressions and timely defibrillation with an AED. And, Seattle's Medic One program, their EMS agency, that agency has some of the highest resuscitation rates in the U.S. And one of the reasons for that is because they have a saying, which is BLS owns compressions, meaning BLS owns, generally speaking, the difference maker in a code, which is CPR. And you have to go through your BLS in order to stop compressions. And if it's not time to stop compressions, if it's the wrong time to stop compressions, you're asking for an inappropriate pause, the answer is no. They're not going to let you do that. So BLS are huge difference makers when it comes to survival. The creepiest thing I've experienced, well, I'm not an EMT, I'm a paramedic, but the creepiest thing I've experienced in EMS, aside from gory stuff, I remember, I'm in the Atlanta area. It doesn't snow here very often. It doesn't get below freezing here very often, but we had this one day called Snowpocalypse a couple years back where it snowed and the entire city just shut down. But we got a call that somebody had drowned in a pool. And so my partner and I get to this apartment complex, and you know how quiet it is when there's snow on the ground. The sound just gets absorbed. It doesn't echo at that point. And so it's really quiet. It's dark. There's a light snowfall. There's a light snowfall, and we go to the pool, and all we see is this dark figure walking in the shallow end of the pool into the deep end and back to the shallow end. That was the creepiest fucking thing I have ever seen in my entire life. Like the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I don't know why, but that's what it was. But it turns out that it was like one of these people who just are like min-maxers when it comes to health and body fat. And I guess when you get into below freezing waters, it does something to burn off a specific type of fat. And that's what that person was doing. But the police came with us because we didn't know because it was reported as a drowning. And they asked the guy, hey, let's get out of the pool. Okay, we're responding to enough real things today without having to respond to nonsense such as this. I've seen a lot of paramedics doing shit compressions. A lot of paramedics do shit compressions. That's absolutely true. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people in EMS where the day they got out of paramedic school or the day they did their first BLS certification or ACLS certification, that was the day they stopped learning new things. And since 20 years ago, when, your training for BLS and ACLS was push fast and push hard, we've learned so much about how to perform quality compressions, and so many people have gone uneducated in that regard. One of the reasons for that is because they're just locked into the mindset they had when they got out of paramedic school and got their first set of certifications. Another reason for that is they're just not exposed to things like high-performance CPR and other progressive practices. And they don't realize that there is so much more than just pushing down on the chest a certain number of times. There's a specific posture you need to maintain. There's a rate that you want to target, so you want to use a metronome. You want to come off of the chest as fast as you can because that's one of the biggest contributors to stroke volume. You want to eliminate unnecessary pauses. You don't want to keep using the same compressor over and over and over again. And it's deeper than that. You want to understand coronary perfusion pressures and the impact that other interventions are having on your compressions. There is so much to performing quality compressions. And there are so many people in EMS, I don't want to call out specific certs, because I don't think it's specific to paramedics, but there are so many people in EMS that really just don't think about it or they don't care about it. They're just there because they get paid to make widgets EMS style. The notion that an AMT can't push epi and pulseless arrest is absolutely absurd. Like, what sort of harm are you trying to protect the patient from as an EMS service by not having your EMT basics or your AEMTs push epi and pulseless arrest? Like, every single patient in cardiac arrest in the US is going to get epi. It's indicated in virtually every single out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. And now we even have services that are administering it intramuscularly. Like, that person doesn't have to have any skill at IO or IV. They can just administer 5 milligrams of epinephrine IM. But even without, there's not a ton of data behind that yet, by the way. So let's just assume we don't have that available. The notion that a basic EMT, an EMT basic, could not drill someone and push epinephrine and pulseless arrest is absurd. Like, it's like a Stone Age mindset at this point. Like, we're trying to build a society here, okay, and save some lives. So can we please get this essential tool into the BLS toolkit, please? And before people get on the epi or the anti-epi train, we don't know exactly the nuance to how epi helps or hurts to a deep level. We know that the administration of epinephrine every 5 minutes per ACLS probably leads to lower survival, but there's some indications that altering the way we deliver it can actually improve survival, including maybe just one epi early in the code, which BLS are in a position to do. I've heard that atropine can cause cardiac arrest in those calls. I'm assuming you're referring to high AV blocks. I don't know about that. In most cases, it probably has it's probably a zero-sum game. Everyone needs a Lucas device. No, they don't. Everyone does not need a Lucas device. There is no data that demonstrates that Lucas devices or mechanical CPR as a whole contributes to better outcomes. It is a tool. And what I'm saying is not anything against the Lucas. We just have to look at everything within its proper context. The Lucas is a tool. And like any tool, you have to use it appropriately. There is an indication for using a specific type of tool. Like, if the only tool you have is a hammer, that's one thing, but we have a lot of tools in our toolbox. If you don't have a lot of responders on scene, you only have like 2 or 3 people that are on a code, or your people are not properly trained, or you're just exhausting yourselves, then mechanical CPR is a great utility. Or if you have to transport, mechanical CPR is a great utility. But if you have a lot of personnel and who are well trained in performing CPR, then there's no reason for you to use mechanical CPR. It's just an unnecessary pause. It's an unnecessary interruption to your resuscitation. And there's data out there to suggest that a well-trained crew with adequate resources will have higher survival rates without using mechanical CPR. My girlfriend has a severe food allergy. What should I be prepared for? You should be prepared for her, if it's just a generalized allergic reaction, to have hives, kind of splotching all over her arms and all over her body, maybe called urticaria, a rash, itching. If it progresses to anaphylaxis, then they're going to have difficulty breathing. They may start getting diaphoretic or sweaty looking, feeling like they're going to pass out. They're going to cough a lot because they're trying to force their airway open. In that case, you want to learn how to administer her EpiPen, which you just jam into the thigh, push the button, and let it trigger. And you want to be aggressive with that. If you're wondering, should I use the EpiPen, then yes, you should use the EpiPen. On a younger person with anaphylaxis, it's going to save their life. If they're not in anaphylaxis, they're just going to be a little energetic for a little while. If you could write a set of protocols on combative patients, what sedative would you use? Ketamine. Ketamine is the perfect sedative. It's short acting, after 20 to 30 minutes, they start coming around again. It's hemodynamically stable. Ketamine. Taking the National Registry in a couple of days. Any pointers? At this point, no, because you're not going to be any more ready now than you would tomorrow. Studying something is not going to bring you from pass to fail within 2 days. You're either ready now or you're not. So you might as well take the next 2 days and do things that make you happy and get those endorphins flowing and stimulate that dopamine, so you go in completely on and aware and alert and happy, rather than stressing yourself out. Do you have the same opinion about EMTs giving IV glucose and hypoglycemia? I do not. I think that at the very least that should be an AEMT skill. I think that maybe intranasal glucagon should be more available, or a glucagon auto-injector, that sort of thing. But I don't think that a basic EMT should be giving IV glucose. What is a science-based recommended meal post-detent administration for diabetic refusals? So they need simple carbs and they need complex carbs. So if somebody becomes hypoglycemic, it means either they burned up all their available sugar because of increased activity, or they've administered themselves too much insulin and burned up all their glucose. And so their sugar levels are very low. We give them a form of sugar through their IV, but it is a very, very simple sugar. Dextrose is a very simple sugar, and they burn that up relatively quickly. You could have their sugar up 250, 300, and 30 minutes later, they're going to be at 100 again. So they need to eat if they're not going to go to the hospital. And there's no reason for them to go to the hospital if it's a simple, explainable event, meaning that there's a story that makes sense. They were working out in the yard all day, they never ate. That's a story that makes sense. Waking up in the middle of the night hypoglycemic with no explanation, they ate properly, they've stayed on their insulin schedule, they're on dialysis and they have liver failure and all this sort of stuff. That person needs to go to the hospital. That's a whole separate thing. We're talking about a very simple, explainable event of hypoglycemia. So if they're not going to go to the hospital, they need to have sugar stores. And so they need something simple. So, orange juice, Coke, that sort of thing that gives them immediate sugar availability. And then they need a complex carbohydrate that their body will break down over the course of hours. So something like a baked potato is good. Breads are complex carbohydrates. With the more grains, the better. Pasta is great. So, like a bowl of spaghetti. One of the best things that you can feed someone or have someone start eating is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That is a fantastic meal to eat following get somebody's sugar up when they experience hypoglycemia. But they have to have complex carbs, or carbohydrate that is going to take time for them to break that down. What are we, medics in here? We are, Maddie K. Thoughts on reducing fractures in the field? That's becoming more of a popular practice. One of the reasons being because it reduces pain when you finally get those bone ends exactly where they're supposed to be. I think it requires very specific training, though. We don't want Joe's medic service suddenly reducing fractures when there are other means for stabilizing a patient, and reducing pain and mitigating the opportunity for bone ends to come together. I mean, there's a lot of people like to splint. I'm not a big fan of splinting because splinting actually does bring the bone ends together and not necessarily where they should be. And the periosteum, which is the lining around the bone, has the most sensitive pain receptors in the body. And so every time those bone ends do this, it's incredibly painful for the patient. And splinting increases the opportunity for that. So I'm not a big fan of like rigid splints or hard splints. I'm more of a fan of a pillow splint where you can actually create a little bit of a fulcrum where that bone, if it's like a long bone, has an opportunity to just relax over it and pull those bone ends away from each other. Lucas and ECMO has done wonders in LA County. Publish your numbers. I'm not disagreeing with you, but anytime somebody says that, let's see the data. Let's see the receipts. The data so far as a whole for ECMO is that for ECPR, which is that mode of ECMO where somebody in cardiac arrest is brought to the hospital and they're placed on ECMO until they can resolve whatever the cause of the cardiac arrest is, a clot, whatever. But the data so far indicates that it hasn't made an impact, that about the people that are surviving because of ECMO or the people that would have been surviving in the field. So let's see the receipts. I'm having heart palpitations bad lately and no doctor anywhere thinks it's serious. Is it? It hurts. Are you actually under the care of a cardiologist? Have you gotten referred to a cardiologist, and have they put you on a portable heart monitor so they can record this? Do you have tips on learning to deal with everybody letting out their anger on you, like in the ER? Just don't. Whenever you repay anger with kindness, you soften people up. When somebody is angry and you return that anger with kindness, it is like shining a spotlight on their anger. And people tend to collapse a little bit when they have some sort of glimpse into their own pathology. And also remember that everyone out there is carrying some sort of burden, and some of those burdens are heavier than others. Some of these people have been caring for other people for a long time, and they've been absorbing the anger of everyone that comes into the ER. And I'm not sure if you're talking about being a patient or talking about being a provider, but either way, over the last couple of decades, everyone has become increasingly angry, and we have all been collectively absorbing that anger, and now we're returning back to everyone. And we just need more warriors of kindness out there to go out and just diffuse that situation by just being kind. Being kind is one of the most powerful tools out there. There's people out there that don't like it when people are kind to them because it does remind them that they're not being kind. I think more people tend to soften up when you're kind to them. Kindness is a very, very powerful weapon. No doctor will refer me. Well, you need to see another physician then. The notion that they would not refer you is absurd. Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that they performed ECGs on you, that sort of thing. I have a wife and 2 baby girls. If you can help, I'd appreciate it, brother. What are we talking about? Oh, you're the one with the palpitations. You need to be insistent. You need to be insistent that you be referred to a cardiologist. You're the boss, not them. That is not the answer. ER docs are built different. I work with ER doctors every day. I work for a hospital system. I've been in EMS for 20 years. And being kind is always the better option. Doesn't always work. But, there's a story about a wager that happened between the sun and the wind about who was more powerful. And the sun bet the wind that he or she, however you want to view the sun, could get this person to take their coat off. And the wind accepted that wager. And so the wind, thinking that they were pretty badass, got to go first, thinking that they would just blow that coat off and that would be the end of it. And so they just started hurling wind at that person, and that person just buttoned their coat up. So they geared back again and started blowing more and more and more gale force winds at that person. He puts his collar up, and the wind just gives it all he has, and that person just pulls that coat closed and wouldn't take that coat off. And finally the sun just steps up humbly, takes a second, and just beams and blows sun all over the place, or beams sun all over the place. After a minute, the person just calmly unbuttons his coat and takes it off. Kindness is always better. People are always more impacted by kindness than aggression or anything else. I'm an EMT now, and I know they aren't angry at me. I get what you're saying. It's really difficult right now to deal with people in the healthcare system because there are angry people in there. Compassion fatigue is real. There are people walking around just carrying PTSD, actual PTSD, undiagnosed PTSD that has developed from compassion fatigue or vicarious trauma, or simply by not taking care of themselves and dipping kind of into the negative as far as what they have to give. And now they're angry and they're burnt out, and we're just creating this positive feedback loop of anger. I don't know what the end game is there, but what I know is that the only thing I can do personally is be kind and to check myself constantly. How am I doing? And ask people, how am I doing? How is my attitude? And to constantly seek to improve myself and to constantly try to be more kind. And if you ask your other people how you're doing and you're willing to accept that feedback, it's easy to become kind. And when I say it's easy to be kind, I think people don't give that its due. It's actually really easy to be kind. It's harder to be angry and burnt out. It takes a lot of energy to be negative and toxic. It really does. The easiest thing in the world is to be nice. It's really, really easy to be nice. And once you do it purposefully for a little while, it just becomes the fabric of who you are. And it's the same, with people who have become toxic. If you start patterning yourself to toxic behavior, you will be a toxic person. If you start patterning yourself to good behavior, you will be a good and kind person. I have sweets with me. I just bring some for the ER staff because they often haven't eaten. Man, I mean, you got it, man. There are ways to get through those cracks. And you know what? Sometimes a little humility goes a long way. When I've had, nurses that I turn patients over to, they're like, "Oh, why'd you bring this person here?" I mean, we've all heard that. And as this individual says right here, "Hey, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't want to bring this person here, but they called 911. And then we got dispatched to the call. And then they said they want to go to the hospital. And we are legally obligated to do that. I really apologize." And when they hear you say, and there's a little bit of like biting behind that. There's a method to that madness, but you're kind of humbling yourself. And most of the time they're like, I know, I'm sorry, I'm just having a bad day, whatever. But, sometimes you can kind of kill people with kindness, if you know what I mean. Yeah, kindness is always the better way to go, both for upset patients and hospital staff. Yep. Something that we are very poorly trained in EMS and in healthcare is de-escalation. And not only with patients, but with our coworkers. We always want to ratchet things up to the next level. A coworker gets into our face, or a coworker says something out of the side of their mouth. A patient gets in our face or says something out of the side of their mouth. We want to meet them right there and then take it to the next level. We are terrible at de-escalating in healthcare. We really are. and we have piss poor training in it. We train all day, every day in cardiac arrest. Well, at least some services do, not enough. But, that's our big sexy thing. And we do a lot of, at the very least, we renew our BLS certifications or ALS certifications every year, but we don't have a de-escalation certification. That's the certification that we should have, is in de-escalation. We need to learn how to listen to people, let them talk themselves out, depersonalize aggression. You are just an exoskeleton in front of them. You are not you yourself. That is not who they are talking to. They are talking to the carbon-based unit in front of them that just happens to be in the right place at the right time. So you have to depersonalize all that. But we should have some sort of certification that we have to renew as much as we renew our ALS or BLS. I may have just accidentally blocked someone. What do I do with a paramedic that won't get out of my face as a student? You're the student? And what does being in your face mean? Like waiting for any opportunity to trip me up. What is wrong with you people out there? Like, are you okay? Why are you trying to trip up students? Who hurt you? Like, you're supposed to be there for them when they don't know something, not try to find out what they don't know and highlight it to their dismay. You're supposed to protect them. You're supposed to help them feel safe in not knowing something. We all need to feel safe in what we don't know. And I say this with the full understanding that if you put me in front of a physician and they grilled me on stuff, that there would be a ton that I don't know. But I guarantee you that the average paramedic out there that is acting like that, if you put them in front of me, I can make them look like an idiot with one arm behind my back. No one is perfect. No one knows everything. And students and people who are new to the field, of course they don't know everything. So why the fuck are you being an asshole about it? Like, be a friend and a mentor, because these are the people that are going to have your back at some point. Because people that behave like that are the ones who are going to do something wrong on a call, because they're actually not educating themselves and they're not being compliant with policies and protocols. Because who would be if they behave like that? And they're going to be in a position to save your ass or hang it out to dry. But it's not for karma that you want to be kind to people and be a mentor and be a friend. It's because it's the right thing to do. Ashlyn Odell is in my live. Discuss the situation with the preceptor first and escalate as needed. Yeah. I mean, if it keeps going on, document. Sometimes you just have to hang a paper noose around someone. You send an email saying, hey, this thing happened today, and this is what happened, and eventually, you build a case against somebody. But, you always have to start with a conversation with someone else. I've noticed that you are constantly laying a snare for me to get caught up in. Is there a reason for that? And what can we do to make it so that you're helping me instead of hurting me? If you don't document, it didn't happen. That's what I have always been taught. Yeah, And I just kind of alluded to that, but you do want to be careful. Like, if these things are subtle, if you can't very specifically iterate what happened, then management is going to see it as a personality conflict that you need to resolve. So, is there an incident that occurred that is easily recognized by everyone else as something that's inappropriate and that needs to be corrected? If there is, then it's worth documenting. But personality conflicts are not worth documenting. There's a book called Crucial Conversations. Like, everyone in EMS should read the book Crucial Conversations. It's essential reading. And a lot of there's this whole chapter dedicated to getting us to avoid looking at conflicts where there is a hero and a villain, where we are the hero and the person that we have conflict with is the villain. Because when we look at it like that, we remove empathy from the situation and remove the ability to see things from the other person's perspective. And sometimes when we have personality conflicts like that, it's because we're looking at ourselves as a hero and the other person as a villain, and kind of doing away with that and looking at the situation in its raw form. Sometimes we realize we've assigned some sort of motive to someone else that really isn't their motive. Well, there's John, man. How's life out of EMS? Thought this was Bert Kreischer for a sec. I have no idea what that means. It's been great, probably going back. Just when I thought it was out, they pull me back in. That's from The Godfather Part 3. Like, that's the only thing good about that movie is that line. EMS is kind of like an addiction. It really is. I don't think it's kind of an addiction. I think it becomes addicting. There aren't a lot of jobs that stimulate dopamine release the way EMS does. You know, I was an electrical contractor for quite a while. I didn't get all hyped up on my way to fix somebody's ground fault outlet in their bathroom, you know? And unless I actually got electrocuted, which was very rare, you know, there just wasn't a payoff to it other than just the pride of having done a good job. I didn't see anybody's guts. You know, nobody gave me free stuff. I just was doing the thing. But in EMS, you are constantly experiencing something that is causing you to release dopamine. And just like any substance that you take that causes that dopamine release, you start pursuing it every day and chasing it. And eventually, you just don't get that dopamine release anymore. And now you're just addicted and burnt out. Tools for talking when the stakes are high. Is that the Crucial Conversation book you're referencing? Yes. If you're really into learning how to communicate with people, read Crucial Conversations. Dang, you make it sound so bleak. It is for some. I mean, it's people that get into EMS need to be protected from themselves. You know, there needs to be a means of protecting them from working 90 hours a week. You know, the limiting use of lights and sirens, that sort of thing. There needs to be a way of ensuring people don't, after 3 or 4 years, start going into that dopamine negative state and suffering from actual psychological harm. And yes, hello, bossy. As he would say, hello, friend. I have music playing in the background like other people do, but I don't like noise. Best argument for pre-hospital ultrasound, about 40% of PEA arrests is actually not true cardiac arrest. It's what we would call pseudo arrest. Either they have a pulse, but you just didn't pick it up, and EMS is actually really bad at palpating a pulse in a short amount of time, or they just don't have a strong enough pulse for you to detect it. And there's evidence out there that demonstrates that if we change our approach with those patients, that it leads to higher survival. And the way that we can change our approach is to have some sort of tool that demonstrates that the left ventricle actually is doing something. And pre-hospital ultrasound is that tool. Also, ultrasound-guided IVs. We are looking at that for our pediatric practice. And then the EFAS exam maybe sometimes can be helpful. For respiratory processes, it's very helpful. Once you kind of master pre-hospital ultrasound or point-of-care ultrasound, you become less reliant on lung sounds and more reliant on that ultrasound. My company only allows 2 overtime shifts per week. We work in 12-hour shifts. I mean, that's a lot. Have I ever seen 999 on the front line? Is that a rock band? That's what that sounds like, 999 on the front line. Or a casino? I don't know what that is. It's about UK paramedics. Oh, I can't watch those shows. I just simply can't. I just cannot do it. I just will end up screaming at the television. I believe we should be correlating tech findings with clinical presentations. Well, of course you should. I don't think I said anything that suggested otherwise. Thoughts on Irish UK paramedics? Do you know of anything that you don't like or would change? Well, I don't know enough to speak to that. Actually, when I used to go live in the mornings, I would get a lot of Irish paramedics in the lives. I can't remember what they said their practice is like. I know that the UK paramedics, or part of the NHS paramedics, that like they don't intubate in the field. Like it's only like the advanced teams and the flight teams that would come do that, which, you know, there's probably a lot of U.S. services that need to switch to that model. But outside of that, I mean, they are infinitely more educated than we are here in the U.S. Penthrox, the green whistle. I know that we're kind of taking a second look at that in the U.S. Basic paramedics can't cannulate. I'm assuming we're referring to IV access there. Our education is definitely now towards primary care more than critical care currently. I mean, that's a pragmatic and practical approach. And you're probably better off for it as a human being because you're not out there every day going, you know, screaming to no one in particular that 999 is for emergencies. It's literally a pathology in the U.S. now. Like there isn't a single person practicing in the U.S. right now who has worked in an environment, with very few exceptions, that people call 911 only for emergencies. No EMS provider in the U.S. knows that paradigm. Yet they walk around like they're someone who is confined to a psychiatric facility going, 911 is only for emergencies. 911 is only for emergencies. 911 is only for emergencies. Like, it's a sickness. And they've never operated within that paradigm. They've never been to a service or worked in a service where they just sit around all day doing mostly nothing until an actual emergency comes out. They do what every other person in the U.S. does that works in EMS. They respond to somebody who called because there was something abnormal, about their health state. And they've watched too much TV to let it go, and so they want a health exam. And so we're going to provide them with a pre-hospital health exam and encourage them to either go to the hospital, or they're going to be reassured by our findings and they're not going to go to the hospital. That's how EMS operates. And every once in a while, one of those patients is going to require you to act and provide something that stabilizes them as far as comfort, pain management, or mortality or morbidity goes. And if U.S. paramedics would look at that paradigm the way UK medics look at that paradigm, they'd all be better off for it. So, Gary Winthorpe, you are either the most naive person in the world or the worst troller in the world. I haven't decided which one yet. Any advice for someone starting EMT school next week? Start reading right now and make friends with paramedics. There is a little bit of a hurdle to cross when you're just getting into EMS and finding good mentors. And so you want to find good mentors, solid EMTs, but solid paramedics more so, because they have a little bit more knowledge and can help guide you through that process. But there's a hurdle to cross because you kind of have to be that kid that's new to school. Hi, my name is Jimmy and I'm new. Will you be my friend? But you really need to do that. You need to make friends in EMS and identify good mentors. And if they are toxic in any way, or they're complainers, then they are not going to be good mentors. But do your reading. I serve the Antichrist. That's interesting. In Germany, we have a number where people can get a GP doctor to come out instead of EMS. Well, that sounds like 1920 America, where doctors had house calls. Start EMT school Friday. Any advice? Yes, like I just said, you want to identify people who can be good examples to you, and you want to stay in touch with them and talk to them and ask them questions, but stay on top of your reading. The best thing that you can do as a student is to stay on top of your reading, and remember that adult education is entirely self-taught. The classroom is not for teaching information, it's for clarifying the information that you have already read. You should not be hearing anything for the first time in a classroom as an adult. So you need to do your reading. Get a couple of reads of the chapter that you're going over in class before that class. Read it again after class. You will be in a perfect position to do well in your exams. Off EMS topic, somebody encouraged me the other day to do some content not related to EMS, just to bring a little bit more personalization to my channel, and I haven't decided whether or not I want to do that yet. Like, I'm an avid book reader. I read constantly, and I'm not talking about like textbooks and stuff like that because I'm always reading something like that, but I read sci-fi and fantasy. They encourage me to make content on the books I'm reading, the games I'm playing, the hikes that I'm doing, that sort of thing. I haven't decided whether or not I want to do that yet or not, because it's just more, it's just something else keeping me in front of the phone. As far as games I'm playing, I'm not really playing anything right now. I have too much going on. I'm a longtime World of Warcraft player. Every once in a while, I'll jump in and see what's going on, but I just get bored really quickly and want to be doing something else. Diablo 4, so I guess you can see I'm a Blizzard fan, but outside of that, not really anything. Recently licensed fire medic here. How do I keep improving my knowledge and skill set? I mean, you have to be doing training, right? Join specific, if you're on Facebook, join specific Facebook groups that are dedicated, to talking about evidence-based medicine. Follow providers on social media that are, good examples and good educators. Once you start following the right people on social media, that knowledge comes to you. It's just on your timeline and it's right there. That's how I got into this, was I just started following the right educators and influencers. And before I knew it, scrolling my timeline on social media was just like, it's like in the Matrix where they were sticking the thing in the back of their head and then suddenly they knew karate. Following the right people on social media is exactly like that. You plug into your timeline during the day, and at the end, you know how to perform a finger thoracostomy. And thank you for whatever that was that just appeared on my head. I'm the worst live person when it comes to like acknowledging when people have followed me or acknowledging when people have done a thing. I don't understand the gift system. I get notifications all the time too about like rankings with live and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know what that is. I'm just hitting the live button and talking to people. Opinion on aggressive treatment for flash pulmonary edema patients. Well, we don't call it that anymore. It's not flash pulmonary edema. We call it SCAPE, sympathetic crashing acute pulmonary edema. And it's called that to kind of better line up with like HAPE and HACE, that sort of thing. But it essentially is a hypertensive crisis. The sympathetic nervous system has become really, really, really excited and has clamped everything down and forced it to your core, which has involved forcing blood into your alveoli, causing that pulmonary edema. You can actually be volume depleted, and this can happen. So what we want to do is cause vasodilation and redistribute that blood. And so what you're going to want to use is high dose or push dose nitroglycerin. Sometimes even close to 2 milligrams IV. Follow your local freaking protocols, please. But there is evidence out there, solid evidence, that push dose nitroglycerin is very effective at reducing SCAPE and preventing people from even becoming admitted to the hospital and forcing intubation. Push dose nitro is exactly what it sounds like. It's IV nitroglycerin, but in higher doses. If you scroll through my link tree, it's going to take you a while because if people don't bring this up from time to time, it gets way down in my link tree. But I have links in there, so if you got a couple of minutes and you can keep scrolling, there's going to be a link in there for push dose nitro. And that's obviously, those patients need positive pressure as well. I mean, you need to get these people on CPAP or BiPAP. Thoughts on past nitro? Or you mean nitro paste? I think nitro paste is a waste of time. I've done 50 micrograms and higher 100 times with CPAP, never push dose. Yeah. That's the new thing. All the cool kids are doing it. Yeah, I know you meant paced. I mean, it takes a while to work, but more importantly, it takes a while to stop working. So if your patient shits the bed and you wipe all that paste off, it's still working for 30 minutes. One of my favorite sources of medical papers related to EMS. I love Resuscitation Magazine and Chest, the Chest Journal, which is, like cardiac, the Journal of Trauma and Acute Care, JAMA. But beyond that, the thing, and obviously the New England Journal of Medicine, British Medical Journal. But the thing is that I follow so many people that they themselves sometimes are names on studies that you see, or provide almost immediate clinical analyses of these papers that, like I said earlier, my timeline, when a paper comes out, that paper is going to be on my timeline, either because I'm following that journal or somebody I'm following is following that journal. So more so than following journals at this point, it's about following the right people. And GEMS, by the way, is not a medical journal. Am I religious? I am not. I am at best agnostic. There was a time where I was religious and, kind of caught up in the whole evangelical movement. And then at one point, I just saw it for what it was. Thoughts and degrees for paramedics. Why can't the US be like Australia or the UK? Well, Australia and the UK have universal health care, and their whole system runs differently. And a paramedic degree works for them there, like particularly like Australia. They get compensated for, I don't exactly know how compensation works in the UK. I know there's a couple of people in here from the UK, maybe they can elaborate, but I know in Australia they are compensated for the work that they put in. But that's not the case in the US. And so let's take what you have to put into a degree off the table for a minute, as far as the resources that you have to put into it. It is obviously beneficial to a human being performing a very important role in society to have a degree, because it doesn't just improve you as a professional, but it improves you, or has the potential to improve you, as a human being. And that's one of the reasons why we require you to have arts and humanities when you get a degree, because it's rounding you out as a human being and hopefully creating more empathy, creating the ability to conceptualize and appreciate abstract thinking, which improves your troubleshooting. All those things can contribute and should contribute to making you a better provider. However, in the US, the juice is not worth the squeeze as far as the resources that you put into that, unless you genuinely have a path laid out for yourself and you know exactly how that degree is going to benefit you, such as that you're on a track to get you into management in EMS and a leadership position in EMS. You're going to have that degree for that, but if you're just getting it just for reasons and you don't know where you're going to go with that, then it may not be a worthwhile investment. And TikTok is going to make me solve a puzzle in order to stay live. I'm getting so tired of that nonsense. Do you ever foresee the healthcare problems in the U.S. being solved? I mean, there is no nation in the world where their healthcare problems have been solved. It's too complex a situation. The question is what system is fair and just for the population that it serves? And it is not a healthcare paradigm where you can actually be denied life-saving care because you don't have enough money. That does not serve the population. And we tend to reduce this to, and I harp on this all the time about binary thinking. We tend to look at this as either problems or no problems rather than a just and righteous system or an unjust and righteous system. So a just and righteous system is where everyone within the population that that system serves can get the health care that they need regardless of their ability to pay and without having to go into debt to pay it. That is a just and righteous system, not one that bankrupts people or denies health care to people. But the question is not whether or not there are problems with that system, because that's always the response. Well, there's plenty of problems in Canada or the UK or in Europe or in Australia with their universal health care. Well, of course there are. No one ever said that there weren't problems. But the thing is that they're serving everyone in their population. So charging people for healthcare is outdated at this point. I mean, the U.S. might as well just be in the Stone Age because we're one of the few progressive nations that operates that way. It's absolutely absurd, it's immoral, and it's unethical. But as far as solving it, I don't know exactly what you want to solve because we're never going to, this world is never going to be utopia. Any tips for someone going through EMT Basic in college? Stay up on your reading. I've answered this a couple of times during this live, but stay up on your reading. Read before you get to the classroom. Read after you get out of the classroom. You shouldn't be hearing anything in that classroom for the first time. And make friends with people who are smarter than you. Possibly a naive question. Would your patients be concerned for cost of your care? They always are. There's patients where they really need to go to the hospital and we're really trying to encourage them to get the care, but they won't because of the cost. And that's why this system is not a just and righteous system, because we have patients whose very mortality and morbidity is on the line, but they won't go to the hospital because they say that they can't afford it. But if you think that it's expensive to get health care, it's a lot more expensive to live without it. How do I manage that as a clinician? By telling them something just like I said. It may be expensive for you to go to the hospital right now, but it's going to be more expensive long-term to manage a chronic condition. Or just say, hey, your health is one thing, money is another. You can't get your health back. Money is just money. You're not going to go to jail because you didn't pay your hospital bill. And congratulations, Nick Q, for passing your national registry. That's great. North Carolina medic, what up? I worked for 5 years in Brunswick County. Worked for New Hanover County for a little while too. I say I work for New Hanover County. Let me tell you a story about New Hanover County. I lived in New Hanover County. I got my education in New Hanover County in North Carolina. I did all my clinicals in North Carolina. I made friends, in New Hanover County. I made friends with all the New Hanover County personnel. And when it came time for me to get a job, I applied. They offered me a job. But one thing that I had to do was take this psychological evaluation called the MMPI, which is like between a 400 and 500 question psychological evaluation. Very complex. They didn't tell me that based on the results of that, they could rescind the job offer. I put my notice in where I was working, my 2 weeks notice, and a couple of days before I was supposed to start, they rescinded the job offer. Apparently, they determined that I would not be a good fit with other people in a fire type of environment. So, number one, New Hanover County is third service. It's a hospital-based EMS. It is not a fire environment. I was not going to be sleeping in close proximity to people. It is a clock in and clock out system. No one has to like each other. They just have to be able to work together. And these people were at this point my friends for years because of how close I had become with them during my clinicals and being able to volunteer as a third person on their ambulances. And that test kind of hit me at the wrong time. Like, I was burnt out from 2 years of being in EMS school and constantly being in clinicals and working full time. I didn't feel like hanging out and going to parties, and that was reflected in my answers in the MMPI. And so I had to crawl back to my current job and have my 2-week notice rescinded and go back to work there. And I always resented that. I felt like I wasn't given a fair shot. I have taken the MMPI since and have not received that same feedback. I've always gotten along with people wherever I worked. But I have the last laugh because I have a probably unworthy amount of influence within the U.S. in EMS, and New Hanover County is now Novant Health, and they are purple. I'm a medic student here. I just wanted to say I appreciate your videos. I share them often. Oh, thank you, Aunt Cha-Cha. Yeah, I don't think they give that test anymore. I remember the other thing that kind of gigged me on that test was it wasn't just the MMPI, but there was a questionnaire, and one of the questions was in secret I, and then you had to finish that, and I resented that. I felt like that was overstepping, that they had no right to ask me that question, and so I simply said that in secret I do things that are secret, and it's none of your business, and they didn't like that. I don't like people trying to get in my head. I've had a long, long life, and growing up was subjected to a lot of trauma. I've had to do a lot to get myself to a place where I'm comfortable with who I am and where I've made strides away from that. But I've done that in the careful tutelage of people that I trust to share what I'm thinking with. And New Hanover County EMS, which is the smallest county in North Carolina, has no right to go poking around in my lizard brain. I was working for Medic, which is a great EMS service in Charlotte. I was working for Medic now on with Charlotte Fire Department. Not official until graduation in January, obviously. It's official now. Medic is a fantastic organization. One of the former directors of Medic became our EMS director in Brunswick County. And then he became director of emergency services in New Hanover County. Now, of course, nobody is perfect, but they wanted to be, right? There's that goes a long way. No organization is perfect, but they pursued excellence. They pursue excellence. There's things that they want people to know and things that they want them to do, and they make sure that they know it and hopefully do it. And that's more than most EMS services could say. See you, John. Go bring it to that tree. They make strides to show they care during hard times. Call volume was definitely high there, though. Yeah, imagine any metropolitan area is just getting killed. Our EMS agency how does an EMS agency lay off 6 people? Like, that is an embarrassment of riches, apparently. And North Carolina is a great EMS state. Statewide protocols, progressive protocols. You don't have to call for almost anything. Great EMS state to work for. One of the few states that doesn't use the National Registry as well. And their state certification exam is freaking hard. They aren't screwing around. Just finished past and cardiology and medic school, halfway done. Any word of advice for the future? Right now, just keep studying. Just keep your head in that book and keep reading and reading and reading and reading and reading. Stay in the groove, my man. Greetings from Germany. You're the second person to greet me from Germany. Greetings back to you. Duoneb versus albuterol. Reason for choosing one versus the other. I mean, the only reason why I would choose albuterol alone, which would be maybe in pneumonia. There's really no evidence that Atrovent really impacts pneumonia in any meaningful way. But really, most of the time, the only reason why I'm not including Atrovent is because they've already gotten a milligram. I work in neonatal and pediatric critical care. It's in just a couple of weeks, we are going to be doing nothing but transporting kids 3 and under who have RSV and bronchiolitis. And we are going to be putting people on Duonebs 3 to 5 times a day for sure. And we always include the Atrovent until they've hit a milligram. And then after that, we don't give them any more Atrovent. And the reason for choosing both of them is so you can attack the problem from 2 different angles. With the albuterol, you're attempting to promote bronchoconstriction. With Atrovent, you are attempting to promote muscular relaxation. So it is, did I say promote bronchoconstriction? Bronchodilation. We are attempting to promote bronchodilation. And so we're just kind of looking at it, attempting to kind of hit it from 2 different strategies. The one thing that we gloss over, I don't even know if we gloss over it, we just don't cover it. Remember, when you administer Atrovent, Atrovent is a parasympatholytic. It's an anticholinergic. And anticholinergics are, and it's similar to atropine, they dry you up. People who are experiencing respiratory emergencies are breathing rapidly, and this is particularly true for pediatrics. You suffer from what's called insensible loss. Children lose so much fluid through insensible loss. They're breathing 60, 70 times a minute, and they're humidifying. They're creating humidity, and they're suffering from fluid loss. It's not a small amount. And so remember, when you're administering Atrovent, that's also drying them up. And so remember, when you're administering Atrovent, that you should also be administering fluid. What states don't require the national registry? It's only like 3 of them. How come BLS and ALS don't get more OB training? I mean, I'll put it on the list of the 8,000 things that we don't get trained enough in. How do UMS paramedics keep currency for low occurrence skills like intubation, decompression, etc.? They don't. There are very few instances in the U.S. where services are actually establishing and maintaining competency for their service members that aren't doing this routinely. Like, there are areas where people are intubating multiple times a month, and that's how they're maintaining their competency, because they do intubate quite frequently. But most services don't. Most services, the only time a medic's going to intubate is in cardiac arrest. The 1 or 2 times a month they might get one, if that. I would probably say that half the providers in the U.S. intubate maybe 2 to 3 times a year. And their services don't do anything to establish and maintain that competency, which is why we suck at intubation in the U.S. I'll give credit to my employer. As a matter of fact, next month I have one of my scheduled OR rotations just to maintain my proficiency in intubation. I'm actually going to be flying on the helicopter on Saturday. That's not a scheduled shift for me. I'm going to be the extra person on that helicopter so that I can get reps. Seems most training is fire-based for US. It is, and they train 70% fire, 30% EMS, despite the fact that they are 70% EMS calls and 30% fire calls. It's bass-ackwards. Also, the normal saline in the duoneb helps to break up the mucus. While limited, it is part of the treatment. Yes. And you can actually expect that when you start administering fluid to someone and that mucus starts to get broken up a little bit, you can actually expect that they'll deteriorate before they get better. You're going to start seeing them cough a little bit more. You're going to see their oxygen saturation drop a little bit. It's to be expected because they're suddenly mobilizing all that mucus in there. I need to cut short this live for a minute. I just got a phone call from someone that I've been expecting a phone call from. I wasn't expecting it this early, but I need to take care of a couple things, so I'm going to cut it off right here. This was a good live. Appreciate all of you, and we'll catch you later.